All right, we are live. Just going on to the various Discords and just posting this so that people know that we are on. And today we are going to be painting Starcraft Tabletop Miniatures Game Terrans. So we have some pretty cool content on the way. Just getting all of these links down now so that people can join us. And hopefully we get quite a few people on. Be a relatively quiet start, otherwise we don't want that. We want lots of people on. So just going into the Archon one, self-promotion, there we go, and bang. Now just let people know in the chats. And no one's joined us yet. In hashtag self-promo. There we go. And do the same over here. We're live in hashtag self-promotion. There we go. All right then. So we are now going to be painting our wonderful Terran. We'll just see how good he looks up close to you guys. Thing is, he's not as well backlit as he normally is, which we can adjust that relatively quickly, actually. So essentially, the light that is usually next to this thing is just up there, which that doesn't appear to be working that well. So we're just going to do a little swap out for now, just so that you guys can see the miniatures better when we actually come to painting them. After all, I think you guys are more important than me seeing things. So let's just get that set up there. Sorry about a little bit of camera shake there. But there we go. So we have our example here of our Terran Marine. Hopefully that's looking quite a bit better. That was my tripod. So you can see on there, we've got all the highlights on. Evening, Aaron. Got the headphones in at work again. Nice work. Yeah, I came back at about 6 o'clock from my work. So I spent about 3 hours of traveling, only 7 hours of working, of which that 7 hours, I'm usually only doing about 5 hours-ish of actual work. So we have quite a bit of like downtime, which is nice, but the downside is it is a lot of travel to get there. And can sometimes feel like, you know, a little bit de-energizing because it's quite a long trek. But actually, I was really looking forward to today and coming here because I've not had the best of days today. It happens, you know, in the performance world. Some days, you know, people are a bit clicky. I'm a bit clicky. Yeah, and it just didn't feel like a great day. So we're going to improve that by painting some cool-ass miniatures. So yeah, we have our Terran Marine. And the idea is I'm trying to get through like a few of my Marines just so that when it comes to the video on Friday, which has to be done and edited realistically on Thursday, I have 6 Marines, one of them completely unpainted, one of them that is going to be shaded with Drakenhof Nightshade over the bare plastic. This is following the direction from Archon Studios CEO, Yarrick. And we're also going to be having one that is just primed in McCrag blue. So that is one of your examples, literally just the most McCrag blue Terran Marine going. We're then going to do him shaded with highlights, him shaded with highlights with battle damage. So there's quite a lot to actually paint. Now, in terms of quality, I have to manage how much of these I can paint. And also, we do have right here our Marauder as well. So you can see our Marauder, that is also going to have, you know, a fair few details that we're going to touch upon. Now, there is a lot to highlight in grey for him. So again, the aim is going to be concentrate on the Marines, the Terran Marines. And then if we have time, do a Marauder. If we have more time, do our medics. In fact, funnily enough, the medic is surprisingly easy to do. I'm just going to take a bit of blue tack so I can get their face mask off. And what we're going to do is just very quickly paint their face. So whilst you're on stream, you can get a good idea of what my technique is for actually just, yeah, painting faces. There are ways to do it which are quite difficult. And for me, I don't like doing that. I like doing things in a way that I find easy. Speaking of easy, getting this actually off their face is quite difficult. The clear plastic almost clicks in, which is not ideal. So we just need to try and really get a lot of blue tack on that. Just try and gunk it up. not really playing ball. I wonder if I just try and peel it out from the front. I know this is riveting content as well. Okay, so we've got her clear plastic cover off. So let me just get this in my fingers. I think you can see that tiny, tiny little thing there. So that is her visor. So if we just get our marine here, you can see there, her face is entirely white. I'll see if I can get it a bit closer. All right, Jack, you've just come back. Just back from Warhammer World. How's it going? Yeah, it's been a bit of a crappy day today, actually. It's a bit weird. Like, you know, I'm usually having very good days. Today, the performance and stuff like that was all fine, but it just felt a little bit clickier than normal. And yeah, not the best of days, but they happen. So, you know, we move on. I'm now just going to paint her face, and it's super easy. Jack, in fact, you know how I paint faces anyway. We like to get our wonderful pot of Darko Flesh. So this is a Citadel contrast paint. We're not going to thin it down. We're going to use it neat. But what we are going to do is control the amount that we actually apply to the miniature. So we have a slightly elevated platform here. You probably can't see it unless I dipped down like that, and then it would follow me. Nope, maybe not. It just might not be in shot. So we're just going to pick up. In fact, I'm just going to wet my bristles first. We're using the Winsor & Newton size 1. It is a very good brush. In fact, it's amongst my best brushes. And we're just going to apply this over all the areas of the face, avoiding anything that's supposed to be like helmet material, and just pooling anything in recesses if we need to. Now, she won't have her helmet put on, her visor put on, until I'm happy that she's had like her eyes painted. Like at that point, I'm happy. But just for instance, this took literally seconds. Just get that right in focus. Don't know how well you can see that, but yeah, it's just a nice little skin tone. It took me, as you saw there, 2 seconds. Even if you're going to then paint over it, which I do recommend, although these are going to have green visors over, so maybe don't spend too much time on it. Even then, you kind of want to... I don't know where I was going with that. I had words in my mouth and it's kind of left me. I don't know. Anyway, moving swiftly onwards to somewhere more cohesive. I have had a long day, so please do forgive me if my brain is a bit like rattled. However, hey, all right there. This camera really zooming in on my face there. Look at that. It's like I've got something really important to say. I don't. It's just tracking my face as if I do. Nothing worse than a clicky workplace. I used to work in a factory. The men there were like a bunch of old women talking about each other. Yeah, this is usually it's reasonably okay. Today of all days, unfortunately, was just a little bit like, you know, everything I did seemed to be wrong, although I didn't do anything particularly wrong. So yeah, a little frustrating. Shows all went fine. It was like people being silly. Anyway, so the medic, we've just quickly painted the face. That took 2 seconds. In fact, we're just going to remove a little bit of pooling around her eye. Now, I know the camera is facing me instead of facing the miniatures. However, I think it's fair enough to say our chats back and forth is better than some footage of a paintbrush on a miniature that is going to look mediocre most of the time. So yeah, we can have a good chat, and then when you want to see some miniatures, I'll slide the light down a little bit just so that it does have a bit of a better backlight when we do have the miniatures up. There we go. So that way, when I show you the medic, you can see there all the detail in her face. God, it really wants to zoom out, doesn't it? Zoom in on her face. It refuses. But yeah, 2-second job. The results are, I would say, pretty decent. The medics are not going to take that a great deal of time. So onto our Terran Marine. Just so you know how to get to this stage that we're at now, I'll show you the front because the front and the back are slightly different. So at the front, the entire miniature has been bathed in Drakenhof Nightshade. So again, Jack will know this all too well, but it's been sprayed in Macragge Blue. We've then gone over all of that with Drakenhof Nightshade. We're now highlighting with Calgar Blue, which, if any of you know your Citadel paint pots, this is actually an old Citadel paint pot. This paint is probably about 15 years old, or whenever the brand, or what used to be the brand new line of paints came out, after they renamed everything. I got like the full set for like, I think it was like 300 quid, and then slowly stopped playing. The fun old days. Might have been 10 years ago, actually. But yeah, some of those paints still work, so it's quite useful. Calgar Blue is quite light, especially compared to Macragge Blue. It's not as bright as something like Rust Grey. Rust Grey is what we would, in this term, call a more extreme sort of highlight. So nothing crazy. But yeah, essentially the Winsor & Newton brush with a beautiful Army Painter wet palette just means this paint stays thin, which is kind of what we need. So we'll see if this tries to zoom in again, which would be quite useful actually. And we're just going to pick out the details around the vents. Again, in terms of the format, we will be doing this as like a results after the fact, just because, you know, this would be ridiculous if I was painting this using the camera to see. Everything would be very, very terrible and sloppy. This brush, by the way, is amazing. So this is just a Winsor & Newton type 0. Oh no, type 1, sorry. Not quite a type 0. You can see the bristles on it are, let me just cover that, really nice and thin. It's all sable hair, so it's all really good quality. Just need some Abaddon black. That would come in quite handy. There we go. So we're going to use this to add contrast where we find like some missing sections. So like in between one of the top power pack vents and the blue of his armor, it just goes from silver to blue. Now that has had a shade on it, but it hasn't quite done enough. Well, that was a little bit too thick. There we go. Sometimes a mighty precise smudge of finger just seems to work. Not always the greatest techniques in the world, but sometimes if it works, it does the job. So if you can see that at the back there, the contrast between the two when you add that black line on. So it's just a little bit of a difference. Again, we have some really bright lights on. I'm thinking black and yellow for my Terran. The choice is, and I find this, obviously, you know, Warhammer capitalizes heavily on this, but the idea is it's your army, you can paint it your way. Well, with Terrans, you have lots of like bands, like there's lots of different, like, you know, units, regiments, mercenaries, all this kind of stuff. So you really can just do it your way. And I mean, look at multiplayer. The idea was you can have your Terran Marine be whatever you want and whatever color you wanted to add. For me, teal was like a really cool color because it was always your hero color. So I kind of want to do like a few teal, maybe like Marines, or maybe just some teal sections, even for like Jimmy Raynor. So we have Jimmy Raynor here. I'll just get to you in a second, Theo. So we've got Jimmy Raynor. All of his arms come off. So if you see there, we just ripped his arm right off. He has blue tack on it. So I can swap this between the anti-material rifle and his Gauss rifle. Maybe Jim and his Marines then do teal to stand out. Well, I think whenever you play the game, like Jim Raynor always had like a slightly different color. If he was teal, his entire armor was teal. I wouldn't go to that extent, but I'd probably do the black armor with like knee pad, shoulder stripes, something like that in teal. Something that harks back to the old days, but doesn't go like full Sons of Horus. Which of the Wave 2 heavies are you most excited to paint? All right, to build and own the Siege tank, obviously. It is like my absolute favorite tank of all time. Even more than anything from Warhammer, to be honest. Like, the Siege tank is the one. In terms of painting, I'm going to say the Immortal. I think the Immortal will be the best to paint. I've seen some of the Stalkers painted in gold, and they look really good. Obviously, I don't have Stalkers. In fact, I think my biggest Protoss thing is the Pylon. So, ta-da. Look at that bad boy. Just amazing. So, a large-scale monstrosity like an Immortal is going to look amazing. If I remember correctly, the base is 100 mil, and the feet perfectly fit around that base. So, it only just fits 100 mil. This is 80. It's like my hand there is a good scale, so it will completely like fit where my pinky is, and it will completely like it's tall as this is, so it's like it's going to be humongous still. Really looking forward to him. Also, that middle section wiggles. Fun. Yeah, the Ravager will be cool as well. Like they're all going to be very, very cool units. I think the Ravager is going to be not tedious, but there's a certain way that painting Zerg, it just takes a lot more time. I mean, you can do like fast contrast and stuff like that, and you can get them on the board quick. But to do the transitions from the browns to the pinks to the purples, that takes a lot of effort. So, yeah, I'm optimistic, but at the same time, it's still going to be a lot of work. Now, again, if you've watched any of our live streams, you know that we can take off the fronts of our Marines. So here we have the front that is entirely removable. And we're actually now just going to try and paint his eyes. So we have here some thinned down Abaddon black. And we're just going to load the reservoir of our brush. We're just going to apply some really thin lines. Now, the way that I do it is I do all of the eye in black, and I do 2 dots, one on the inside, one on the outside in white. Now, with titanium white from Pro Acryl, it makes your life a lot easier because it goes on in one coat. So I don't know if you can see that first eye that's gone on. Now, I know the light that is here is super bright, so if I turn that down a little bit, I wonder if that will do a little better. You see like the black spot where his eye is? I don't know why it keeps zooming out when it does that as well. It's really annoying. But yeah, I have to do like a little bit of magic to get everything to work together. And having this on a super wide is a bit too awkward. And if I then whack it onto the regular lens, I mean, there's probably a little bit more detail, but I think you guys would lose out a bit just because it's not going to like follow me around. In fact, I'm going to open the door a little bit because it's boiling in here. And if we're lucky, my cat might appear. Yeah, sure. Pull it to like so. Going to be mostly playing Terran, so I have only the regular starter kit coming, but very good chance I'll pick up the Immortal just to hobby at some point. Yeah, it's going to be a really, really cool miniature, like without a shadow of a doubt. We say picking up the Terran starter kit. Oh, okay, I see what you mean. You're getting the new one. I thought you meant as in like you got the 2-player and you had Zerg already and stuff like that coming. If you are just getting the Terran starter set, it looks like a really good kit. I mean, it's essentially the same thing, but without Jim Raynor, and instead you got a Goliath. So if you separately go and buy Jim Raynor, you have the entire Terran, Founders kit. Also, pickle Rick Glass. I turned myself into a goddamn pickle! I love Rick and Morty. It's just stupid. Absolutely stupid, but fun. Okay, so we have Baby Horus, and he has his... Let's zoom in a bit more. He has his little dark eyes. We're now going to get our Pro Krill. Bold titanium white. Now available in stores near you. Easily the best white. There is no argument. It is just fantastic. I'm thinking Black and Yellow for my Terrans got through that. Maybe Jim and his Marines we went through that. And no, I meant the 2-player. All right, okay, yeah. The choices with that, you have an enemy faction to play against and learn. So for me, the Zerg are enemy faction for me. So it's not like my main collection. My main collection is mostly going to be Protoss and Terran. However, obviously I run this channel, and the one things that I do have to do is prioritize the new purchases and stuff like that, so that you guys can get some cool videos too. So I am willing to make that sacrifice for you. Just remember that. I'm very kind and generous in that regard. I'm willing to buy miniatures so you don't have to. It's not just an excuse, okay? Also, I definitely grabbed a Goliath and Hydralisk too. I didn't grab Hydralisks, so I had to be a little bit frugal at the time of the pre-orders, which unfortunately meant that I couldn't get everything. Now, it's not the end of the world. Don't cry for me. But at the same time, I really like Hydralisk. I mean, they are one of the most iconic units in the game. So now we have our Pro Krill Titanium White, and we're just going to do tiny little dots in there. Literally just... Ooh, that was a bit too much. That's okay. Not horrendous. But we're going to be going back over that anyway. So let's just get... All right. One eye is done to a reasonable standard. We need to go back over both of them with a little dot of black anyway, so that's not really a problem. Also, you may notice that when I really focus on what I'm painting, I go very quiet. Quite rightly. So a lot of sort of my paint technique is breath control. So when I'm doing really fine details, I am very much so focused. Not so happy with that one. Get into that bit. Not my favorite, but not bad on one side. I'm just going to add some more white onto another side. You can do this a bit of back and forth. Main thing is when you're painting eyes specifically, you want to work with really thin paints. If you work with thick paints, then game's over. You add too thick a paint on and you start removing lots of the detail. Whereas for this, we can get away with just tiny little dots. And we are literally just going to put in a tiny dot of white. Okay. All right, I'm happy with that. So what we're going to do now is just a tiny little bit of dark oak flesh. Again, the contrast that we use from white to get a good flesh tone. And an example for those of you that have just joined is he is blown out by the light, so don't get too judgy. But whacking back there, how close can we get? Should be able to get a lot closer than that. It should still keep focus. Oh, there we go. Yeah, do that little zoom in. I don't know if you can see the eyes from there or not. Basically, just his lower eyelid just needs a tiny, tiny bit of dark oak flesh contrast. And that's just going to take it from the white that sat there to a flesh tone. So we're just picking up a tiny bit on the brush, minuscule. We don't want to load it. We don't want to overload it where it gets to a point where it's just going to pool. And then... All right, there we go. Are they the best eyes in the world? Yeah, I've done better. I don't know if the heads on these are smaller than what we're used to with Space Marines. Possibly. The detail is there. It's just, anything. Painting eyes is quite difficult. And certainly when my main lights are facing this way, not that way. I'm going to get a few excuses in there. You'll let me have that, I'm sure. And let's have a look. So if I whack him back into his armor, now he has his eyeballs. If you can see, where can we get a good angle of that? A good angle? Yeah, see if that will zoom in again. Come on. There we go. It's like learning how to trick it. So you can see his little head there. Here's a really cool miniature. Yeah, those eyes look all right. Now, in terms of visor, all of these are designed in a way that you can take the visors on or off. For this, I'm just going to put a bit of blue tack on the inside of the helmet. I don't know why I'm doing the cheeks, like this sides of the helmet. That way it has something to bite on when it goes in there. So it won't naturally just fall out, even if you shake it. But it's going to be able to be removable as well, if I just want to, change it up a little bit. So we take a tiny bit of blue tack, and that's probably way too much. And I'm going to take my, where's my tool gone? I have my texture tool. So if you've got like metal scalpel and stuff like that, they are equally useful. I'm just going to apply. If you look inside the helmet, it's going to be hard to show you on here. But if you put it on this side, if you look inside just there, there's like little grooves where the helmet slides in. Sorry, the visor slides in. Obviously, it is the helmet. And then, yeah, tiny bit of blue tack in there. Again, you are just doing like a little bit of holding strength. Wow, that was really Yorkshire. Little bit of, just a little bit of holding strength. I had a workshop with some of my voiceover buddies, and one of the little challenges that we did, I did in a Yorkshire accent, as they would say, and they did not understand a thing that I said. So talking like we're from Barnsley. If I knows where Barnsley is, let me know in comments. But yeah, talking like proper Barnsley lad, and they did not have a Scooby-Doo what I was saying. It were quite funny. And also, if you have any like questions for painting your Marines as well, feel free to ask it in the chat. It's not a problem. Like the back and forth is half of the fun of these live streams. All right, just getting this blue tack in place, and then I can show you this helmet with the visor on, which I think you will quite like. Just getting that blue tack down. Trying to get it to stick a little bit. I think if we just had like a tacky paint or like a tacky glue, I don't mean like PVA, because PVA eventually then hardens. I mean like a gel that just constantly stays tacky. That would be really useful for, I mean, saying that blue tack is literally what I'm talking about. It'd be useful just for holding in things like these visors. But yeah, literally, I suppose that is just blue tack. Right, just pick up my excess blue tack. We do not want to be leaving blue tack everywhere. Certainly not with the cats around. All right, I'm just going to go clip a visor. I have all of my Starcraft stuff, so let's see if it follows me. Hello. Can't follow me. All right, I've got all my stuff right here. So I'm just going to go in, hunt for the little pack that has all the visors attached to it, which I can see right there. Here, lots of plastic on plastic, so I apologise about that. There we go. We have a ton of visors in here. Do I even have a Terran Marine? Yes, here's a visor on. Okay, so in lieu of clippers, we're going to do the old school twist and pull. Works every time. And then just with a fingernail, we're just going to mildly clip the edge of the visor. Now, when we get this, in fact, before we put this visor on, I don't know how well it'll show up, but we literally have like a texture to it. It's like the hexagonal texture of the helmet design from like Jim Raynor's helmet, for instance, on there. So we're going to get a little bit of Reichland flesh shade. So we're going to find where that is. And we're just going to put little dabs on the inside of the visor. Inside of the helm. Oh, sorry, inside of the visor, but on the outsides of it. So it's like the extremities here. It should give us just that little bit of variation to make it look more three-dimensional, make it look more alive. That's the word I'm looking for. All right, so we have a nice pot of Reichland flesh shade. Good paint. If you're doing anything that you don't want the overall tint change that Darko flesh does, Reichland flesh shade is very good. It'll tend to leave your highlights untouched, but it will leave the recesses in the same way that Darko flesh does. So really useful paint. We are just going... Oh, used to work with the lads from Barnsley. I thought Teesside accent was bad till I met them. So I used to work as a soldier. And there was a lad, I won't say his name because he was a soldier, and we protect our own identities at times. But he was a Barnsley lad. It was dead good, because whenever he'd give out orders, you just have this man talking just like this. So you'd have to take, sit down, take your notes, and you'd just be chatting away to you like this. I used to love that. You're also dead good bloke. So yeah, I'm quite fond of the Barnsley accent. Also, arguably my first love was from Barnsley. So, God, if only I'd bought her a bag of chips. But I didn't. Anyway, a different life. All right, so we now have the visor in place. Just cover up my face just so you guys can see that. So you see the visor in place there. And from the back, you can kind of just about see where the blue tack is. So we're just going to take a bit of this Reichland flesh shade. I'm just going to flatten out a little bit of this blue tack just so that we've got as much adhesion onto both ends as we can possibly get. There we go. Bag of chips and a barm cake. Aye. Best thing is you've got what's his name now? I think his channel's now Danny versus Food, but it used to be Rate My Takeaway. International superstar Danny. Really giving the Yorkshire accent a good showing. All right, so we're just applying this little pool of Reichland flesh shade. And it's just going to tint the visor a little bit more. We're not doing much. We're leaving the front as clear as possible because we don't want to lose that much detail in the face. We already lose quite a bit due to the texture. The medics are better. But I want these sides to look a bit warmer, just to give it a bit more depth. It's like you're seeing it side on, and therefore it's changing the opacity of it. So it's like it's now a readier thing, or the reflectivity of it, however you want to look at it. We kind of just want it to look that little bit more special. And I'll show you the results afterwards. Obviously, the camera's pointed at me, not the miniature, but we will come back to painting the miniature or one day when we make enough minerals to be able to survive and pound more money into the company. We'll have, the proper multicam setup. So you can have me in a corner and then look down, miniature with decent lighting. I have to figure out how to do it properly. I mean, I have I don't know if you can see this here. This is part of my top-down view. So I have a way to cheat that. Now, let me see if you can see the red tint in there. You can just about see it from there. Can you see it from the front? It's weird because you guys don't have the backing or the backlight that I do. Maybe if I add this in just behind it. Can you see the tint either side of that? It is subtle, but that little tint just adds like a bit more of like a three-dimensional effect to it. So I'm really happy with that sort of style. Right, just click that back down. We're going to place that over his face now, just so that we can see how that looks when his head is supposed to be shining through there. Like, you only get the tiniest glimpse of his face. So let me just put that up there. See if we can get this to zoom in again. Every time it sees my face, it wants to zoom in on me. There we go. Can you see his face in there? It is very hard to see with the texture. I do wish that they did do some clearer ones. But it is what it is. And the idea is that I can take this off. And, you know, if I just take off the full front plate, obviously you can see his face all you like. But yeah, you can only just see it. You can just about pick out the details of like his nose. Again, if you're painting these miniatures and you don't like painting faces, paint the face white, some darko flesh over it just so it has a flesh tone. Whack the visor over it. None will be the wiser, but they'll be able to tell that there's a painted head in there. I mean, equally, like the sides of his head, like the back plate I've done is like a metal. You can't even see that. But at least with like the Reichland flesh shade, you do get that little variation. So I'm happy in some aspects. You can actually find, I did say I was going to do something quite special for him, which, again, if we go back to this, that little section on Jim Raynor there, yes, zoom in on me, this bit here, that little holographic on his cheek. We're going to try and do something a little similar. It's not going to be that, because that fine detail is just not really applicable to this. But we do have some edge highlights, some blue horror. And we're just going to apply a thin amount of this to his cheek. So again, we're kind of going for like a very similar effect. We want that, you know, something's projecting on him. I don't know whether you're going to be able to see it through the thing. Probably not, but I like the idea that it's there. So again, just find a bit of his cheek and just paint that in place. This is also a really good paint just to edge highlight, like the very finest of edges on your blues. Sometimes if it goes on a little bit thick, you can just give it a little dab. So I'm just going to give you some examples. Now, normally I'd put on another layer before I went to this sort of extreme, but for the sake of this miniature, it's fine. So this is going to be like the brightest highlight that you will ever do. Certainly for this blue. All right. Just find all my little edges, which there is quite a lot in here. And down on here as well. Does look really good though. These miniatures, by the way, are fantastic. Alrighty. Get the inside of there. And I don't know. Yeah, it's not quite low enough for you to see it. Is the Vallejo game colors good for vibrant colors? I've not used much Vallejo stuff. However, I hear them highly recommended. So I won't get too bogged down with what's good or bad for your first set of paints. If you're going with like your names like Vallejo, AK, you know, Color Forge for your sprays, or, you know, Citadel paints, people will badmouth Citadel. The paints aren't usually bad. The vast majority of them are actually really, really good. And they might have like a couple that's just a bit meh. But that's the same case with every single manufacturer. So don't get bogged down with which ones that you're buying. If it's a good deal, yeah, go and grab them. You'll enjoy them. The main thing is, especially whilst you're getting used to painting, is just to paint more. The more you paint, the better at it you will get. In fact, I'm going to add some Calgar blue into his cheek. So what's happened is I have added the blue horror. Come on, do a little zoom in. There we go. And you can't really see it. It's too bright. It's almost like a white on there. So we're just going to add a little tiny bit of Calgar blue in there, just so we've got like a little more detail. So the Calgar blue is really useful. Good paint. 6 to the key. Hi Pat. I think a few people have been back in and out since. 180 euros for the whole game colour set. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Like I say, Citadel back in the day, I think I spent like 300 quid for like the full paint range, which was about 320-ish paints, I think. It included things like textures and stuff like that. I did not use my 350 odd quid's worth. I think I was like maybe 18, 19, but you know, some of them I still have use of. Some of them just dried up because the pots are a bit naff. But if you ever know how to thin down your brush or thin down your paint from that section, that little lip, these are really useful. So you can just like load your brush up with water, dab a little bit of pigment on there, or just grab a little bit and put it on your wet palette, mix it up, and then you're good to sort of like paint straight from the pot, essentially. All right, Tiny Horus is looking particularly good. So we're going to put his front face back on, get him all covered up. After all, without his front armor on, he is ripe pickings for a Zerg. You can just see, such a cool miniature. They are really cool. All of that is just Ultramarines blue with a shed ton of Drakenhof Nightshade. So if you're looking to paint yours, super easy technique. There are certain segments on this now that I need to figure out what bits are going to be metallic and what are not. Mainly because I need my metallic sections to pop. You see there's light here. That light just needs to stand just out of shot, but be just helpful for me. There we go. That'll do. That's better. Right, so the back of the miniature, we did add those extreme highlights. Let me just do the annoying thing of having to cover it with my hand. So how much you can see those. Oh, it's starting to zoom in. Very good. So there's like little dot highlights. If you looked like his armor on his bum, there's like little tiny dots of bright blue. So that kind of thing just draws your attention to the edges. None of this is like a realistic style of painting. So all painting is just art. It's whatever art form you choose. When it comes to painting miniatures, you'll find lots of people that will do things like, and I do volumetric highlights for certain miniatures, and that just means if your sunlight source is up there, you do like little patches on the armor that are brighter than others, like at higher spots. It's just like a style of painting. It's almost adding realism to something that is usually not realistic, but it's fine because it looks really good at the end of it. Now, for these guys, I'm kind of doing like a mixture. I'm trying to show off different techniques for you lot, which is always useful. But I kind of want there to be a case of like you can see edge highlighting, because edge highlighting is important for many reasons. One of which is just being good at painting, like having good motor control with a brush. Like not everyone does. Not everyone has the steady hand for it, be it like, you know, just themselves or any like form of like disability. But certainly in terms of if you want to get good at painting, good motor skills are quite useful to have. Again, you know, not everyone will get to the same level. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is just having fun. But, you know, improving your skills, trying new techniques and stuff like that. edge highlighting gives you control of your brush, and that gives you control of your paint. So you can add highlights to wherever you would like. Let me just see if we can add some onto the shoulder here. And whenever I'm doing these highlights, I tend to go quite quiet because there is quite a lot of concentration involved. And when you add on your shade, it does tend to pick out any bits like the clippings from the sprue, even when you shave them down a little bit. You don't always get every last detail of it. Now just adding in various highlights on here. And sometimes you can add like a really bright highlight onto a rounded surface, and you almost make it look like it's a flat surface, just because it's so bright. Rather than seeing like the curvature, you end up seeing the line. It just looks like it comes out from there. I'm going to show you a similar example to that. Not quite as bad, but it certainly does make it look a little bit different. And then we're just going to use the edge of our brush just to add a highlight on the inside of there. There we go. So these shoulder pads take longer to highlight than, say, a Space Marines. Just get that zoomed in. Again, I know the brightness is quite high on this, so if I drop it down, it might just have a better chance of focusing on it. Just get that like so. Can we get it to zoom in again? Come on. Ignore my head. There we go. So you can see on that shoulder, we've added edge highlights and stuff like that. And then just above it, we've added an edge highlight, and it almost flattens out that armor and makes it look like two flat edges. I want layering. Nice. I want to try layering first without the contrast or oils. Contrasts are useful, though, to be fair, especially if you're a new painter. And even if you're not sticking with the contrast after the fact. Say, for instance, that miniature is blue. If there is a dark blue contrast, I could go over the entire miniature, spray it in white. In this case, I spray my closest color to the main color, so it got sprayed in blue. But you can spray them in white, go over the entire thing with contrast paint, it will bring out all of the detail that you're then going to go over with your brighter, more vibrant paints. And it also does all of like your shading then as well. So if you thin your paint down to a point where it's quite watery, you can start building layers of that paint on top of like the higher points, and each layer will add in more color, more vibrancy, and you can build up that gradient and stuff like that. So it's like really deep and rich on the lower portions and really bright and vibrant on the top. Stuff like that is quite hard to do, but the end results of it are really good. But again, like, I don't know what your painting level is at. Are these your first miniatures? Just let me know, Tony. So a small set of layers plus a small set of contrast. Yeah, 100%. If you're a new painter, like, even just doing really fine highlights is quite tricky. In fact, Jack, are you still in the chat? If Jack's still in the chat, Jack's been one of the Patreons on this channel for a long time, and like, he can tell you firsthand when he first started painting just how hard highlights are. Like, I've been painting for 25 years. At this point, I have the motor skills. The biggest game changer that you're going to find in terms of paint is having a wet palette. So let me just give you that example. So this is a wet palette. It is essentially a layer of foam with a layer of like, it's hydrophilic, but it allows just a little bit of water to seep through it. Almost like a greaseproof kind of paper. and you apply your paint on top of that, it keeps it wet enough that it doesn't dry out. So it just extends the life of that paint whilst you're working, especially in temperatures like this where it's a bit warmer. And it'll keep your paints thinner as well, because you can smudge it out a little bit, work it across the palette, and that's going to thin your paints down. Now, a thinner paint, if you go too thin, doesn't apply right. It sort of like, it becomes like hydrophobic, or the paint becomes hydrophobic against the plastic. So you try and apply it, and it kind of just does whatever it wants. If you keep it just at the point, then there is a fine balance, and it takes time and skill, but you'll get there. Once you hit that fine balance of just the perfect amount of like paint to water, you very lightly apply paint with your brush and it just goes on exactly how you want it to, like the finest and finest of fountain pens. There's no resistance to it. It just smoothly goes on. If you're using really thick paints, the paint is drying on the brush and it like dries into the bristles. And so it becomes harder and harder to do a really fine edge highlight. And depending on your skill level, like a lot of edge highlighting. So for instance, if that is your edge, and let's just call that the tip of the brush, you would usually want the tip of the brush to roll over like so. That works well when you have sharp creases. This guy has a lot of curved armor panels. So he's surprisingly tricky to paint like that. So you have to get to a point where you're good with thinning paints so you can run in a line. It's tricky, but the more you do it, the more practice you get, the better you become at doing these highlights, and then the better your miniatures will look. It doesn't really matter too much. Again, I still 100% stand by the most important thing is having fun, because if you don't have fun doing this, it becomes a chore, and painting when it becomes a chore is just something that like gives you an excuse to not do it well, and then you'll just be rushing. I'm doing some Moonstone right now, and I'm new. So as a non-native English speaker, first prime, yep. Then contrast with the normal for details, touching up. I'm really glad. Whereabouts are you from in the world? Obviously, don't be specific about like, I'm in Milan on this street. Whereabouts are you? Zinger or Elzinger. I don't know if that's your actual last name or not, but Netherlands. All right, cool. Nice to see you. Yeah, cool. I'll have some Dutch on here as well. Wet palette will be ordered now. Yeah, Army Painter's wet palette is really good. I have the XL version. It comes with like 50 sheets of like your hydrophobic paper. I tend to spray the foam, like the bit that holds the water, with like 2 or 3 sprays of a mold and mildew remover. So mold and mildew, obviously like the green nasty stuff. Because these are wet palettes, they're going to hold water for long periods of time. So they will start to like have those problems. So you just spray it with a couple of sprays of that, and it just keeps that from like occurring. Again, when the palette does get a bit too wet and it knackers out a little bit, it can get a bit slimy, and then you just have to get rid. So 50 sheets of it keeps you going for a long time. So don't feel like you're going to, need to top up on your papers very often. I've had my wet palette now for, well over a year, comfortably like 18 months-ish. And I've never had to like get more paper. I still have like 30 odd sheets of paper up there. So really cool kit. You also get a speed paint tray as well. So again, that's your contrast paints. And so you have basically just these little puddles, these little pools, and you can just add water in, add your contrast in, use it, cover it up. So it won't stop them drying out, but it'll, reduce the speed in which they dry out. All useful, good stuff. Staying hydrated with some Pepsi. Not good for you, but it tastes nice. So getting back to this miniature, another thing as well, before you use your paint, just wet your paintbrush, dry it off, just like literally just touch it onto some tissue paper, just so it absorbs off any excess water. then go in with your paint, especially on the wet palette. It's just going to pick up a little bit of paint. I don't know if you can see this, but you only want about, like the first 50% really of your brush to have picked up water. Pick up paint. Ideally less if you can get away with it as well. The idea of the game is just brush control. And a lot of that comes from having a thinner paint. So we're now just going to start doing some more highlights. So that is looking surprisingly thin, actually. So we're just going to go into a thicker bit of the pigment there, a little bit less of the edge, and we're just going to fill this section in. We're literally just running the tip of the brush into the edges, keeping our highlights really crisp and sharp. Again, you don't have to go to this level of detail, but you'll find contrast does a great deal for you in finding these details, and then you can work on top of that, because you then have an idea as to where you're needing to paint. So it is a very useful tool. Same with shades as well. If you get like inks and stuff like that, it's a very similar principle. You're using the ink to show off where the detail is in the miniature so that you can build up these flat layers. You can build up on top of like the recesses. Try and make your life as easy as possible, because painting can be quite difficult. I mean, I don't know if you can see it here, but it's starting to get a bit darker in here. Obviously, we've got 2 studio lights, but it's still quite dark. So good lighting is always a must. If your eyes are deteriorating, if your eyes are getting a bit bad, then ideally you want some form of magnification. Again, anything that you can do to reduce your eye strain, the better. Because again, these are temporary. We don't have great eyesight forever. So when you do have great eyesight and you want to paint, make sure that you look after them. In this case, with really good light for me. My eyes are still good at focusing, thankfully. I've been fasting all day. My eye focus is really, really good when I'm fasted. All right, I don't know if you can hear that, guys, but we have Tarlyman. He's just joined us. That is our cat, and he is shouting at me. Luckily for him, I thought about this earlier. I have him a little perch. Come on up. Come on. Yes, good boy. Oh, there is that. Are you okay? He's shouting. Good boy. All right. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll take these down so that you can jump up. This is the joys of painting with cats. All right. You ready? Move this out of your way so you've got all the room in the world. Right. Come on up. There. Good boy. Who wants, nice thematic backgrounds when you can have a cat? Welcome to the Terran painting scheme, sponsored by Tarly. And he's currently shouting at me. Good boy. Good boy. All right, you happy now? Can you lie down? Are you still going to be erratic? Quite possibly. Yes, good boy. Right. Let's actually read some of your messages. So the shadows are already nice. I think contrast would be handy with the faces of a goblin, and later touch it up with some layers. Yeah, and it's the same with faces as well. So if you look at my medic, just get her zoomed in. I say zoomed in, it'll only go so far with the focus. But her face, for instance, that is like a really good base to then build up from. So you could quite comfortably add in a brighter flesh tone onto like the tip of her nose, eyebrows, tops of the cheeks, chin, lips. You have choices. You can either use a brighter flesh tone for the lips, or if you want to go for like a more natural thing, I tend to use you want like either a deep red that is thinned down to a point of like being really watery. you'd kind of want to tint it, but I have a really good contrast paint called Vulpus Pink. And if I can find Vulpus Pink, I can show you kind of what it looks like. There we go. I think that's it. Vulpus Pink. Really good paint. So this is going to be used a lot in my Zerg. And you can see there it's quite a deep, sort of like also a mauve. I think that's the name of the color. Sort of like a goth pink, deep and like dark. A little bit of that thinned down on the lip just gives you like a really naturalistic lip look. In fact, do you know what? We've got a bit of time. Let's do it. So we'll get out our Vulpus Pink and we'll just go add a little bit into there. So yeah, once you bring out that detail, because again, if I show you Jimmy Raynor right now, for instance, I know it's not going to be zoomed in and perfect, but you try picking out any detail on his face, and you can get like the big stuff, but you can't get the little subtle details from that. Which, for me, I prefer priming in brighter colors because it's easier to add shade than to try and bring color out. I get the reverse of starting from black, because if you miss anything or can't reach anything after the fact, then you can go over it. Or, sorry, if you can't then reach it, because it's black, it blends in a bit better, depending on the miniature. But yeah, you kind of have to find a fine balance sometimes. All right, so we're going to use some neat Vulpus Pink, which goes against what I've just said, but I'm going to do the inside of her mouth because her mouth is open. So we'll go Vulpus Pink. The teeth we'll do in a bright white, which we have some down there. And whatever excess we have, we can just leave almost a thin amount. We're just going to thin that down a bit. And we're just going to apply a little bit onto her lower lip specifically. Usually these miniatures don't leave you with a massive amount of room. So we're going to let that just dry off now. If we can kind of show you the subtlety of that. Come on, give us a little zoom. There you go. Don't know how well you can see that. Just that little bit of pink in the mouth there. Again, just kind of going something a bit natural. There it looks like she's been beaten up a little bit because it's like everything's that pinkish red over her teeth. It's not a great look. So we're going to go over that with white once that dries. And you'll see like the pop then. Vulpus is my favorite contrast. Yeah, it's an amazing paint as well. Yeah, you can use it as well. So if, for instance, if you were doing a really long skin technique, prime in white, contrast in Vulpus Pink, take a relatively bright flesh tone, something like, I have an example of this here somewhere. Where are you, relatively new flesh tone? Cadian flesh tone, for instance, or we've got Ungor flesh, Kislev flesh, all the kind of like flesh tones you'd expect. You thin it down again, so it doesn't like pool, but it still goes on relatively flat, and you add layer after layer to more of the exposed muscle. And what it essentially does is it's like starting off with the muscle layer, and then you're adding thin layers of skin on top of it. And by the time that you've finished, you have this beautifully natural tone. So it's a really, really useful set of colors. The technique is quite difficult, but the results of it after hours of painting actually look fantastic. Nice, I'm understanding now. I was seeing both products as an option and not as a combination. Yeah, and again, this is... all of this for me has come about from play. So I started not originally, the contrast didn't exist 25 years back. But when I came back into the fold, I was shown these contrast paints. And it's like, oh, wow, these are incredible. Like, you can do so much with them. And certainly I've seen plenty of people do like, Jimmy Raynor, for instance. We'll paint Jimmy Raynor black. We'll Xenophol. We'll spray a light or dark grey over the top. We'll dry brush it with a light color so it picks out all the details. And then we'll just slap a load of contrast paint on it. And the end result is a miniature that looks okay. I wouldn't write home about it. They're not special. But you know what? if you're starting off painting, slap chop, which is the technique that I've just described, it's actually a pretty good technique just to kind of like get some miniatures on the board and have detail and depth and shading to them. But you're not going to, and I don't mean this as in like you're not going to win awards. Like that's what is important. What I mean is you can't really take that miniature further from there. Whereas with this technique, for instance, that's only one layer of highlights. You know, we can add more highlights onto this miniature. We can add brighter highlights onto this miniature. But you could do your entire army just, in this case, for this blue Terran, sprayed in Macragge blue, highlighted, shaded over with Drakenhof Nightshade. Just paint your weapon in silver. I've done Drakenhof Nightshade for both like the silver pieces and the blue paint. So all of that, you just go over it with those. Fine. The miniature looks okay. It's nothing crazy, but you know what? You've got depth. You have some form of highlights because the shade is obviously going to pull downwards. Yeah, it's a perfectly usable, good miniature. But then, you know, you do a little bit of painting here and there, and you start to feel more and more confident with edge highlighting. Well, now you can take your Calgar blue and start highlighting the edges of all of your details on there. All right, you might not be the best of it to begin with. You might also be great at it. I mean, that would be pretty cool. But if you are struggling at the start of it, don't worry. It doesn't really matter. I'm not going to judge you. And anyone who does judge you is an idiot. You know, the point is that you're learning and you're improving. But yeah, all of these techniques, as I was saying, will allow you to grow your miniatures with your skills and techniques. So they're really useful. All right, I'm going to just finish off a little bit more of my edge highlights. Again, the fun fact with me is that I have a ton more that I need to paint after this. So, I mean, it'd be nice to be able to show you a finished product today, but I don't think we're quite going to be able to do that just because it does take such a long time. But this miniature is probably going to be the one that you're going to see as the final technique or the end product, essentially. So when I do the showcase of like, there's going to be 6 Marines, possibly 3 medics and 2 marauders. And the idea is to show you like the techniques that you can bring that will improve your miniature's look on the table. Then I say improve in like, you know, a mild way. Like the reality is you paint to what makes you happy, but it'll give you options. And I think that is important, especially as new painters. When you're not quite sure of what techniques to use, you're going to hear 1,000 people tell you all sorts of things whilst you're researching on the internet. And not all of those techniques are going to work for you. But if you're showing a few techniques and the results of it, then, hey, you know, you can decide to grow with what you find best. And again, all of mine are going to be following the same progression. Also, how's work going, Aaron? Do you want to divulge what you do, or is that something that you don't want to particularly do? Obviously, I don't want to push you and say, tell me what you do for a living. But I mean, it'd also be quite cool, you know, if you do anything like engineering and stuff like that. I do engineering, subcontracting and stuff like that. Obviously, I'm an actor, first and foremost. That's a good fun job and quite varied as well. So at the minute, I'm doing some seasonal work for like it's not local. They're about an hour and a quarter away from me. But you know, I do some seasonal work, I think is the best way to put it. So like, you know, a family theatre. So that's kind of nice because I get to, you know, make lots of families happy, which is mint. And I get paid for it. Wonderful. But yeah, I also do things like video games and stuff like that. So, in fact, I don't know if the camera will show it from here. We'll see if we can spin it around a bit. That is my vocal booth, and that is my microphone. Actually, if we go deeper into there, all of that is my orc army. So any of you that stick with me for like the rest of the stuff I do on the channel, obviously I don't just do StarCraft stuff, I do StarCraft stuff and Warhammer stuff. We have new orcs coming at the beginning of September, so we're going to have a lot of orc content as well. As well as orcs, I also like collect things like Tau and Space Marines, and Guard. I have a lot of armies. Anyway, we managed to pick this up from War Office, which is like one of my semi-local game stores and a really, really, really good independent. Like in terms of, like, for me, they look after me, which is really useful. But I got a Shadow Stone for £22, which is pretty cool. Aggressive behavior, disability support, and management, essentially. All right, so like I do lots of with my acting stuff. I do, especially around Christmas time, lots of SEN stuff. So yeah, I've encountered lots of people with various disabilities, mental and physical, and certainly, you know, the carers that also work with them. So yeah, well done. It is a pretty selfless job as well, and I imagine also a pretty hard job as well. But it beats being in a warehouse. I'm thinking about starting Orc after Moonstone. Yeah, do it. Do it. Orcs are amazing. In fact, the price list has been leaked. I ended up watching mine through Glass Half Dead, but essentially some local game store somewhere in the UK has given off the prices. Codices have gone down drastically in price. In the UK, they were £37. They're now £25. So that's quite a difference, you know, literally a third shaved off there. So that's useful because codices were too expensive, I think, before. They are paperback now, but I don't think that's really a problem. I mean, you know, my StarCraft rulebook in front of me there is paperback. It's fine. Absolutely fine. Even though I think that they can do them a lot cheaper, it doesn't matter. The book will be really nice. Apparently, they're full of more lore now and will be going forward as well, which is really useful because I think codices should be a lore book, and the rules section of it, even though they have to provide the rules in there, are obviously all digital now. I mean, they add new units willy-nilly, so it's really not an issue. The Orc truck, I think, has gone up to like £52. But when you look at the customization options, the thing is designed to make three, you know, varying differentials of this truck. So is it expensive? Yes, it really is. But you're going to have a lot of spare bits from it. And one of the things that I'm going to be doing next month is building a looted battle tank or battle wagon. And I'm going to be using bits from that truck kit to basically increase like the orkiness of the, you know, Lehman Russ that I'm going to be building. So yeah, it's going to be a really cool video, actually. I think it's going to be really, fun. Now, we'll get back onto StarCraft anyway, because I do digress a lot. I think that's just something that I do. But yeah, in terms of this miniature now, he is, I'd say, coming along. I'm being quite slow because I prefer to talk to you guys than paint this. But I do also need to paint him. So we're just adding some of these fine highlights. And again, the joys of having a wet palette. This paint has been sat out for quite a long time, and yet it's still perfectly applicable. Like it's not dried up and it's not difficult to apply. You'll also see here I am using like a miniature holder. And this is a combination of two miniature holders. It's a Citadel holder, but the large Citadel miniature holder also comes with this chunky base. It's quite hefty. It has like these gaps in it, which are designed for like the prongs that you get. In fact, they come with this kit. But you can use them to hold like pieces in your spray holder. So it's like a thing with rubber bands on it, and you can like slot the bases into the rubber bands and it holds them in place while you prime them. Again, really useful bit of kit, actually. But things from that can also go in there. This can be used to, like, say for instance, I take off his chest piece, I could like have it held up next to him. So it's a cool bit of kit. Also, this miniature is freaking amazing. Now, I will give Archon their dues. The miniatures are absolutely fantastic. I will also like call them out when I think things are a little bit problematic. And I think obviously the shipping stuff was pretty bad. But now that they're here, they're well worth the wait. Like, these miniatures are just incredible. Just the sheer amount of detail in them. Just concentrating on a few highlights here. Again, that paint is just a little too thin, so we'll just pick up some fresh. We're just going to get a nice tight line in on that edge. This, obviously, for you guys, I can put it up to camera, I can show you it and stuff like that, and I will do in a second. But what you'll find is you're not going to see the same amount of detail on it that I can see. It's just the nature of the beast. However, this is going to be a prominent miniature for the Terrans paint guide. So you will see some really good shots of it. So don't fret if like you're thinking to yourself, oh god, I can't see that well enough. This is going to look amazing when we do get to that stage. So just for now, you see like the highlights on there. Also, most of this miniature is quite curved, like all the faces are very curved. So that can create its own challenges as well. Usually if you have like flat panels with like sharp edges, it's really easy. Like highlighting a box would be supremely easy. In fact, it'd be boring. This having so many curved surfaces is trickier, but more rewarding when you get it right. But the armor is so chunky. Like, it is such amazing armor. Just figuring out where I can put my lines on it now. Just have this little outside section that we're going to do. And that is a shoulder pad done. Going on from the shoulder pad, like every piece of this miniature is complex. Like I originally described this to one of my Patreons as being quite a simplistic miniature, you know, in the same way that Space Marines are. I thought Terrans and Space Marines very, very similar. When you actually see the complexity of like the arm on this is like so much harder to paint in some aspects. It is really complicated, but it's also well worth it. I think it looks incredible. Like this guy next to a Space Marine, yeah, this is peak miniature design. I think they've done such an incredible job with them. Yeah, the downside of that is to paint him up fully is going to be, you know, a 4-hour job just to make him look the way that I would want him to look. But this is kind of the point, is that we're going to show off different techniques so that you can just take Cletus over here and just literally wash him in loads of Drakenhof Nightshade. In fact, would you like to see that? I think that might be a useful thing to do. So what we're going to do, you'll see his combat shield is held on with blue tack. So, and all you do with blue tack, if it comes off like that, is just tack them together, and eventually one picks up the other, and then just pull off whichever one survives. And in that case, look at that. Nice and clean, super easy. Not had to use a magnet, which I think makes life more accessible for most people. Magnets are very good for new hobbyists. I think they're a bit more daunting just because you are having to drill into certain sections of your miniature to fit in these magnets. That can put a lot of people off. I don't think it's 100% necessary. Whereas working with like, yeah, blue tack, you can apply a thin amount of blue tack. It's enough to hold something in place. It's not going to shake off or anything like that. Look, again, front of this miniature, held on with a bit of blue tack. I had to check because some of them don't need it. So yeah, it makes your life easier. Now, let's have a look. I'm thinking starting orcs after Moose. We've already gone through that. So now we have our wash brush. You can see here we have a chunky brush end. You can see all of the paint ends up pooling in this section and hardens up. Every now and then you've got to thin it out. Because this is a wash brush, I tend to use like something like acetone. If it's going to burn the bristles or anything like that, it doesn't really matter too much. I mean, these aren't synthetic bristles. These are proper, proper hair. They're doing the sable hair, but, they're still like a natural hair. But it's a useful thing to be able to basically clear this section. One, it'll hold more wash, and it'll also allow the brush to have more flexibility, which is useful. So Drakenhof Nightshade, everybody. The best shade to have for a blue. It's basically a smoky blue. I find that quite useful. Now, for Macragge blue, as you can already see, you're going to go from this kind of bright blue, which looks a bit silly, to this kind of more naturalistic blue. Look at that, camera doing a really good job there. So yeah, it's going to add not just depth, but it's going to tint the rest of this blue out as well, which is what we want. So we're just going to load this brush up. Don't be shy with it. You can apply it quite chunkily on. It doesn't overly matter. In fact, for this one, even, helpful, shoulder comes off immediately. Even the weapon comes off on this, because for this miniature specifically, you can either have like a slug thrower, or you can have the regular C12 rifle. So we've done it so that you can have both, because what beats no options than more options? So again, think smarter, not harder when you're building your miniatures as well. If there's something that you can get away with not gluing, certainly for painting, it makes your life a lot easier. When it comes just to like having options, not everything has to be magnets. It's a nice trend. I think it certainly is a very useful thing, but again, you can do some out of the box thinking, and a tiny bit of blue tack goes a very long way. It's surprisingly good. Now, because these have been primed in Macragge blue, they have essentially lost the shiny metallic finish to them. So that is the only downside. I think the plastic in which they originally inject these in, it's actually a really nice sort of style of plastic and color. However, you can't really build on top of that color without painting it. So we're just going to be adding, like I say, Drakenhof Nightshade in there. Nice and thick. We're not trying to, conserve paint here. We want all of the recesses to go in. We want the shading to be done as well. And like I say, a heavy hand in this is not a bad thing. And all the pooling and stuff like that, if you didn't like the end result of the pooling, all you would then do is thin down, in this case, Macragge blue. In your case, whatever the original paint is that you were priming this in. And you just add a thin amount of that, and you'd go start from like 2/3 of the way down and lightly brush up with some really thin down classic original paint. That's going to start to give you that natural gradient again. So in this case, we don't need it. I think the end result from the Drakenhof Nightshade is actually pretty cool. Hello everyone, thank you for joining us so far as well. Just so you are aware, we are just currently going over a Macragge blue Terran Marine with Drakenhof Nightshade. It is a Citadel / Warhammer paint shade. Your choice may vary. It doesn't really matter too much. I think people get really, really bogged down with paint colors and paint manufacturers as if, only one manufacturer has truly understood how to make a paint. And the reality is they all do pretty good jobs, actually. Even, Citadel that gets slagged off for reasons beyond me. Vallejo obviously do a good job, but even with certain YouTubers, I mean, maybe even me at some point, if you're watching sponsored videos and it's sponsored by Vallejo Paints, just remember that word #ad has to sit in there, and that #ad, or this video includes paid promotion for said product. those opinions are paid for. So it doesn't mean the product's bad, but it does also mean that the opinion is tilted a certain way. So always take it with a grain of salt. Which I don't know if that sentence passes across different what's the words I'm looking for? Different cultures, different languages, but it essentially means don't just believe everything that you see. You got to apply common sense to things, and again, I have to live as well, and if I get a paid sponsor, all my sponsors I want to be particularly appropriate and useful to wargaming for certain. If they're not, then there'll be something that is generally good in life. So, yeah, we all have to make a living. We all have to exist and, pay our mortgages and put fuel in our car and eat and all that kind of stuff. So I completely get it. At the same time, you got to use your noggin at times. Not everything is quite as it seems. Right, so here we have our fully bathed Terran Marine. I'll just put that in front of my face so it doesn't pick me up. So that is now much darker. And can you see like all the depth that's kind of like pushed into that miniature now? It's just bringing out all of the sculpture that's already sat there. So on top of this, you can then highlight it, or we could go a stage further than like edge highlighting, which would be volumetric. So again, in this regards, you have so many curved surfaces. And we did say like, if, for instance, the shading was too much for you, you might want to go back over with like the original color. We could go over this with Macragge Blue, and you'd want to start from roughly 2/3 down, thin. So this paint would go on like almost a water. You're tinting each time you add a layer. You're just building up to the top, and that gradient would look really, really good. You can then edge highlight, or you can stick with like the volumetric style and just use brighter colors just towards the tip of it. That might give it a gem-like look, which isn't always what we want to go for like a flat armor. But again, they're all options that you can play about with. For the sake of the video that we're going to be doing on Friday, we are going to be sticking with the one style, and that is going to be the edge highlighting. So I don't have time to do all of them. There is too many techniques. Now, his helmet, I don't know if you can see that. So his helmet is all blue. Obviously, the visor is tinted orange. But if you look, I had to move it because my cat jumped up. One second. If you look at our good old Jimmy Raynor over here, ta-da, set dressing. Ta-da, set dressing failed. We have like a carbon fiber style top on there. Now, is everyone going to have carbon fiber? Probably. I think they'd be quite uniformed. Just put this one down here. Show a little bit of variation. He's lacking a bit of weight in that, actually. So what's the best weight to use? Oil paints. Funnily enough, these I do want to do a video on at some point. These were gifted to me from War Office. However, these are quite tricky to work with in some aspects. So we'll save these for another video when I have more time. But it's a really good counterweight. They are very heavy. So there we go. We have a little bit of set dressing on there. I would put up more, but if my cat comes back in, he's going to want to jump back up again. And he's a very lovely cat. Nothing beats Crayola. Yeah, just get a Crayola and just scribble all over your miniature. No, actually, the wax in that could be really good to like stop paint getting on, because it would be quite, hydrophobic. Right. Anyway, back on subject. We have, again, our original Terran Marine. Now, I am conscious that I only have so much time, and I do have to get on with the rest of my miniatures. So we're probably not going to be around for more than half an hour for the rest of this stream. However, I do want to try and show a few things that you can do with your miniatures just to make them stand out a little bit more. So I'm just going to highlight up some things that I'm then going to paint over, which sounds a bit dramatic, but I think by the time that I'm done, and you see what we're doing, you'll understand. It's one of those things that I saw on one of the datasheet cards, and I thought, oh, that's really cool. I want to do something like that with mine. And it was literally just adding in white stripes and stuff like that, like squad markers. So we're going to do some squad markers using some of the various elements of this armor as a perfectly good canvas. And we're just adding on. I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm absolutely going to be painting over this section in white. But we're just adding our edge highlights onto the knee pads. Not all this knee pad's going to be white, but certainly I think this bit will be. Right. Suppose it will help me figure out just what's going on in there. So I'll show you this knee pad in a second. It's a shame. With Patreon, when you do a live stream, you can also like add photos into the chat, which is really, really useful stuff like this, because you can just demonstrate what you've just done. With this, I can't, which is a little frustrating. But when you see this, it will hopefully make a great deal of sense. So the knee pad is obviously a three-dimensional shape. It's quite smooth in its edges. However, if we show you, which knee pad is it? The one opposite the weapon. Okay, so if we show you the knee pad there, can you see how like the highlights on it have sort of made it look like a sharper edge? Like it's more, you know, each panel is flat and it's just like a flat edge, like squeezed flat edges. That kind of style. I don't know if that makes sense or not. But adding highlights into things does flatten out curves. So you can be really soft with your highlights. And the more subtle you are, the less it looks like it's a flat surfaced sort of thing. You can make smoother edges with them. In this case, we don't want to. We want to do something fun. So we're going to get Corax White next. So I have to find my Corax White. Corax White is a really good paint because it goes on quite opaque, but it's a bluish off-white. So a blue tin off-white. I think this is Corax White, yeah. So there you go. Corax White. Really cool. Great work on the new content, mate. Keep it coming. Cheers, mate. Skin Chief, you're an absolute legend. Thank you for, again, sticking around and watching them. Honestly, it's starting off this channel 8 months ago in the way that it is now, the format that it's in. I didn't expect people to watch anything. Like, we made YouTube Partner, was it 3-4 days ago or something, which I'm still kind of like adjusting to. Like, I'm still blown back that people actually watch these things and stick around. So I appreciate every one of you that has been enjoying this content. Again, little things like leaving comments in videos, it just means all the world to me. One, because like aside from these live streams, every video that I make tends to be in like a bit of a bubble. I don't really get to talk to everyone, until after the fact. So I kind of have to judge my own ability to curate content. And it's nice to know when it's, landing in the right spot and everyone's enjoying it. Because it's not always a guarantee. Now, I don't know if I can point this out. I don't know if you'll actually be able to see it because it is quite subtle. But we'll give it a try. So, come on. Not pooling too much water. So, Corax White is just put my head out of the way. Corax White is just there. And then your bold titanium white is just down there. They're quite different levels. My cat has just joined us. He is currently shouting at me, and I don't know if you guys can hear that. In fact, can you guys hear my cat? Oh my God. The loudest shouts. Right. Come on, you. Up you come. Come on. Go say hi to everyone. He's a good boy. Yes, you're a good boy. Mwah. Good boy, Tally. Right. I do need to still paint his face. Is like pure disappointment. It's like, how dare I do something that is not tickling him? I should be subjugated and immediately punished for not tickling him 24/7. Or sometimes just looking at him. That's all he wants. Sorry for the late arrival at the stream. I had a meeting at work. Don't worry, Joe. Honestly, people joining at any time, it's fine. Watching after the fact, I don't mind. You show up when you show up. This is... Please tell me that you just heard that shout. Like, the loudest shout I've ever heard. Come up here whilst I'm saying hi to everyone. So yeah, Joe, don't ever feel pressured that you have to show up at the start of the stream. It really doesn't matter. Just these are for your convenience. You show up when you show up. If you can show up whilst it's live, that's good because we can actually talk. If not, we have a comment section. Jump in there. I'm always happy to talk. So yeah. In fact, if anything, I'm talking too much. So what we're going to do now, just so you're aware, is we're just going to add some stripes into our Terran Marine here. Wow. Did you see that? My camera was like, no, I'm not going to show you what you want to show. We're showing the cat off. So we're going to add a few stripes in here as like squad marking sort of thing. So super easy. I'm just going to figure out how I want to do it, if I want to leave a slight edge, just so you can pick apart the edge highlights still. And then we're going to save some of that titanium white to then go back over afterwards. It's clever, I promise you. All right, pick up a bit more of that white. So you can see that on his knee pad. So at the minute, it looks like a light blue-grey. It kind of is. Corax white is a more grey than white, but it's going to look brighter when you add the highlights in after the fact. And again, we're kind of trying to keep as much of this as the original colour as possible because the highlights are going to basically make this colour pop. And then once we've added our full stripe in there, we can really go to town. So you see that? Camera is really struggling to figure out what it should be focusing on. So that is our little stripe on there. We're going to do the same thing for one of the sections on these shoulder pads. And we're only going to do this on the inner knee as well. We're not going to do it fully on the rest of the, like the outer casing. And a bit unlike Space Marines, is what I'm trying to say. Unlike Space Marines, we're not painting like edge trims in different colors for like squad markings or anything like that. These have more of a style of putting their markings on the rounded bits of plate. I'm going to see if this has a good example. So this is an example of a war pig. Brilliant. Yeah, focus on me. This is an example of a war pig. Again, doesn't really show it, but they usually put like some form of marking on there. I'll see if it's on anything else. Yeah, we've got a little bit here. I think this might be Tycho. Not Tycho, Tychus. He's not a blood angel. As you can see, this guy just there. So we have, squad markings, but they also put things like, Ace of Spades and stuff like that on as their like battle rig. I love the way that they actually like modify their armor to look special. Right, I'm just picking up some bold titanium white. If you're wondering why I'm saying it like that, it's because it's the best white in the market. If you need a pure white, Pro-Acryl bold titanium white, there is no white that comes close. I am not sponsored. It is just that good. And we're just going to add a little line up at the top of this, in the middle of this, just give us that subtle sort of like line there, so you can see where the shading is or where the angle is, and then just on the bottom as well. Meanwhile, I am still being shouted at by my cat. What is wrong? The world has ended for him. The world has ended. I have not tickled him for 2 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, I would love to show you this knee pad. You see that knee pad there? Ignore my face. There we go. So you can see that on there. Apparently my Terran Marine did a thumbs up. No, come on up. Come on. Come on. He's plonked on the floor. He is protesting that he demands more tickles. Tally, you're going to get stood on there. That's dangerous. Yes, come say hi to the people. Join my live streams where I'm going to paint a Terran Marine / tickle my cat. Look at her loving eyes, though. And they say, like, cats aren't as loyal as dogs. I beg to differ. You're a good boy, aren't you? Sometimes he likes to show up in videos as well. Can't really stop him. Not when he's this handsome. Good boy. Good boy. Are you okay now? Okay. Just have his gums rubbed on you know, on a YouTube live. Why not? Right. Good boy. Good boy, you silly munchkin. Right. Oh my God, dribble everywhere. Can I go back to painting now? Thank you. Your Majesty. He's a great cat, but also I kind of want to paint this a little bit. So we're not going to do the edges. I think is one of the things that I was trying to say is we're not going to paint the edges of the banding on there. If we did so, it looks like it's a raised piece. So we're just going to do the top, the crease in the middle, and the bottom. That way it's highlighted up nicely. It is more pronounced in real life than the camera's picking up, but the lighting situation at this time is quite tricky. Again, we'll get something a bit better later on. I say later on, for the main video coming out on Friday. The aim is to get it out for about 7 o'clock UK time. We'll see how close we can stick to that. Again, I have so limited time. I still want the video to be the best thing possible, so I'll figure out the fine balance. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the thicker end of that Corax white. All right then. So we have a nicely filled reservoir on our brush. I also want to do a Sons of Korhal symbol on this as well. Now, over on the Archon Discord, I was getting teased for having mould lines on this miniature, of which I'm not that fussed. Little mould lines, barely noticeable and stuff like that is absolutely fine. Anything shockingly horrendous, probably best deal with, but the main point of this is we're actually painting over one of these with this white, so you won't even see it. It's kind of the joys of painting is you can actually just hide things. So as you can hear, when I go quiet, I'm actually focusing on my breathing just to make sure that I'm breathing at like a fairly steady rate, just so that I have a good focus and control over my brush. It is one of the levels of seriousness I take my painting. I'll even stop breathing to paint well. All right, now we're just going to get a bit more of the underside of this piece. So now you should be able to see we have a stripe just on that shoulder piece. Controversial opinion. Yeah, it really was, wasn't it? Look, when it comes to your miniatures, they're your miniatures. If you want to leave on big chunky mold lines, you do that. Don't worry about it. In terms of these miniatures themselves, the Protoss were relatively good for mold lines. A few little spots where you might find some, but again, they're in really places that you're not going to look too deeply on, like the back of an adept's foot, which is like hidden by a cape or cloak. So stuff like that, don't worry about it. The Terran Marines are certainly more present with mold lines, and it's mostly legs and the shoulder pads. So the shoulder pad, the little rounded section on the front, that tends to have a little line going down it. You can trim it, and what I've found is that I've trimmed some of them and then I've primed them, and you can still see it. And it's because you've got the metallic blue plastic, it looks like it's fully gone. It's not entirely gone. It's fine. It's really, really, really not the end of the world. But don't particularly care about whether you leave mold lines on and stuff like that. The internet's full of people that will have all sorts of opinions. Just, have your hobby your way, enjoy it your way. Don't worry about it. In terms of me, obviously I've tried to spend as much time on these as I can, but I'm very limited by time. I've done a relatively good job. Front of them don't tend to be too bad. I can occasionally see a little thing where I think one of my miniatures I'd swapped a leg around because I'd picked the wrong leg. Anyway, anyone that cares about mold lines has too much time on their hands. They really do. I do not have half an hour per miniature to deal with mold lines on legs. In fact, I have very little time, unfortunately, because, again, I'm racing against the clock to get these videos out. And it's not because I want to get this video to you immediately. It's because I have a very tight schedule. And immediately after Wave 1, we are getting Wave 2 straight on the back of it. I also have, like I say, the Warhammer 40k Orcs coming out shortly. That is going to take up a lot of my time. I know it's going to take up a lot of my time, so I'm already kind of like looking ahead how I can get some StarCraft videos out to you before the end of September. I also need to do like a Warhammer video before the end of the month as well, because I want to make sure that all of the people that enjoy me for Warhammer also have something to, come back to and enjoy. Right, we're just painting up this bit of the helmet. So let me actually show you rather than just tell you that we're painting up a bit of the helmet. If you can see that little section, just cover up my head. You see that little bit opposite the visor? Quite subtle, actually, on the camera because everything's getting blown out. It's just black for now. The rim we're going to do in silver, but I'm going to do the entire thing in silver. And there's little bits of that still look like the original helmet. Paint it silver. Then we're going to wash over it with orange. And I'm hoping that's going to give us similar to that visor color. We're going to find out together. So in fact, on that note, we have some lead belcher. Lead belcher is a really good paint. If you need a silver, a metal color, lead belcher is a pretty easy one to recommend. Like, the stuff lasts well. The grain on it is perfect for miniature painting. It's really fine. You're not going to have any real problems with it. It's a really cool paint. I'm just going to thin that down on the brush there. And then go over bits of this with that silver. And again, just being nice and careful not to get it onto the clear visor. I think that is quite important. Again, you can hear me going silent. That is just literally me really focusing. That is like my breathing technique. Again, a little bit about me. I used to be a soldier. I know, quite a chunky man now. But at one point, I was slightly healthier than I am now. Only slightly. But I was a very good shot with a rifle. And amongst that, the technique is pretty transitional between painting and shooting, because you're essentially having to control the movements of your body. In this case, my hands, my breathing, stuff like that. And actually, when you're doing miniature painting, you have to be really, really steady. Otherwise, you'll make all manner of mistakes, and we don't want to do that. We want to be perfectly perfect. Right, so we're now just adding a little bit of silver to the banding, which is like the... Because my cat came in, I moved it. 1 second, please. The banding, which is that silver layer there, like the edge of the close section of the carbon fiber rim of his helmet. Which is also interesting. Carbon fiber is not a good ballistic material or ballistic resistant material. So I'm not entirely sure why they've used it. And it's powered armor, so who cares about the weight? But it's sci-fi, so I'm not going to question it. That is just a general good rule in life. Do not question sci-fi. Do not question the reasons. The reasons are because they are. Hence why you have, basically a rail rifle, but it also has a cartridge to the projectile. You know why? Because they're rednecks and they like the sound of gunfire. That is exactly the reason why it is. And so they can blat off 60 rounds and feel great about it. So there we go. We've just added a bit of silver on there. We'll just get the color balance right there. So again, if you can see the inside of the visor, we added a little bit of Gilliman flesh? No, Reichland flesh shade. Reichland flesh shade is a reddish ink. So we've just done that onto the inside of the visor, like this section of it, not the front bit, because we don't want to tint anything that's going to block the face. The face, as it turns out, is fairly blocked anyway. But it doesn't matter. We're doing this section because I want to have like that variation from, like, again, the visor is like reflective, but I want it to go from darker to, a little bit clearer. It gives you that transition. So we have that effect. I'm really happy with it. Now, we have this silver on. Do I want to hit it with a brighter silver? No. I'm going to hit it, funnily enough, with the Drakenhof Nightshade. If I can find where I've put it. I've laid it down somewhere. It is quite an important paint to find. There it is. So we're going to do Drakenhof Nightshade. And usually, again, we're just talking Games Workshop colours. For metals, the main two are Null Noil, which gives it a smoky sort of effect, like a smoky black. Problem with that is grey on silver doesn't always give it the best sort of a finish. Then you get Agrax Earthshade. Agrax Earthshade makes a weapon like it's been heat cycled multiple times and oiled. So if you want something that looks like an oily heat cycled weapon, that's a really good bet. Give me a second, I'll show you an example. So here we have our fine Mr. Gazkul Thraka, who's just had his latest rules update, and he is absolutely a beast. But if you look at his weapons now, look at that steel on there, and it is literally like a dark browny silver. So what this is done with a different technique, but the idea is you turn your silver into a really nasty brown silver, and then you dry brush over it with more silver, and you end up with this heavy use oiled metal that looks, like I say, like 10,000 rounds have been fired through a steel barrel. And, every time you've cleaned it, you've oiled it, and it's seeped into the pores, and then it's like cooked off. And that's kind of the idea. That level of steel looks really cool and worn. Drakenhof Nightshade is not that effect. Drakenhof Nightshade is like a tempered steel, like it's been heat treated, and it's like a fresh steel, like that little bluey glint. So when we do the rifle and stuff like that, I kind of want the Terrans to look like their equipment is actually fresh. Like, they're not like Space Marines. This is not a rifle that is handed down from generation to generation of Space Marine. This is, a mass-produced kind of weapon. And they make them using pretty good materials. Like, the rounds are like depleted uranium or tungsten. They're like really hard materials that are expensive to manufacture. So I can get away with making their miniatures look like they're actually, they're inexpensive pieces of armor. These are not just like Imperial Guardsmen. They're not wearing cheap, mass-producible flak armor. They're wearing, really expensive suits of power armor. And I want that to just 100% stand out when you see the miniature. I want the armor, the weaponry to all look like it's new, to look like it's of a high grade of manufacture. All right, well, let's just catch up with the chat. I love this dude. I presume you meant this guy. He's awesome. Also, again, people talk about magnets all the time, and magnets are great, but if you're just new on this stream, magnets are cool. Do you know what's also cool? friction fit. Sometimes things come off and they go back on without needing magnets. In terms of painting, these front fascias, the arms go on them, but then they come back off as well, which means you can paint them separately, or you can have more access to paint things like faces. In this case, we have Tiny Horus, because he's bald. Everyone that's bald looks like Horus. Ask a Blood Angel. So, yeah, this is very much a case of this one's friction fit. Some of them aren't fitting quite as tightly, so we just added a tiny bit of blue tack. That's all you need. Magnets aren't like the be-all and end-all. Oh, love this dude for Gazkul. Got you. Sorry, it took me a second to catch up there. If you would start Orcs, would you buy the Armageddon or start here set? The rules are available online for free, so you don't need it for the rules because you have access to the core rules. I think having a paper copy is better for me personally, and the same reason why I like having the paper copy of the StarCraft core rulebook. I will be doing videos on less so playing the game because I think there are quite a lot of videos that are out already. But if you want to see videos of me doing it specifically, then let me know and I'll add it to my multiple projects that I need to do. It takes quite a bit of learning, and I'll have to do quite a few test games before I can do so. But if you want to go into data cards and stuff like that, you can do that. But anyway, a paper rulebook is useful to me because I like physical copies when I'm reading. Digital copies just don't quite sell it to me as well. And just put this down without it getting in the way of Lost Temple mat. So if you want the rule copy, Armageddon's really good. If you want an enemy faction, if you've never played Warhammer before, the Space Marine miniatures in there are also really good. They're all push fit as well. So less needing to glue things in, more just pushing bits together. It's really clever. And it means you can do things like remove bits again without destroying the miniature. Or in most cases, without destroying the miniature. Sometimes it will break a pin. Oh, hello there. Hey, our favourite Canadian. All right, Axe, you well? I hope you're well. We're just talking about Orcs for Tony at the minute. In fact, they do have the Space Marines in the latest starter set. I think both sets are reduced in the amount of miniatures that you get, though. So you're lacking, I think it's a couple of characters for the Orcs, and for the Space Marines, you're lacking the Heavy Bolter Eradicators, and you're missing the... Is it not the Librarian? It'll be the Chaplain. So you still get the Vanguard vets, but you don't get the Chaplain with Jump Pack. The Armageddon box was really good. If you can get it from a local independent store where it's cheaper, really, really, really good. Great box. If you want to get a set that's like the StarCraft set where you've got terrain and things like that, the Ultimate Starter set is probably better for you. Even if you're lacking a few miniatures, I don't think in the end it's going to matter, just because you know that you've got, enough to play what is their smaller game version, like the Skirmish of StarCraft. You've got Combat Patrol. You'd have a Combat Patrol for Space Marines, you'd have a Combat Patrol for Orcs. You've got enough miniatures there to get on with, certainly loads to paint, especially when you've got StarCraft coming as well. I think you would get on very well with the Armageddon box. But again, you want to save a bit of money, you can go for Combat Patrol Orcs. If you want to get some terrain, you can go for the Ultimate Starter set. You're getting a good deal from those ones anyway. So just pick the one that you would think would suit you best. I recommend, for most people, if they are new to a hobby, if they can get an enemy force and an opposition force, it's useful that you can play a few games with, quote unquote, yourself. But it means that you're able to get a few games in, learn how both armies play, learn how different tactics work, and just have a bit more fun with it. Again, if you've got a partner that's willing to play with you, I unfortunately do not. She absolutely does not care one iota about any of these miniatures. These are just expensive dolls to her, which is quite funny. She calls them Barbies. I love that. So good. Yeah, the Armageddon set I really enjoyed. In fact, I have the unboxing video on the channel if you haven't seen it yet. I also have the painting videos that have the 48-hour challenges where I painted my orcs and a 48-hour challenge where I painted my space marines. So go and check it out. I think it's actually in the description of this video. Yeah, we've got access to it all there. Hello, David and crew. I almost need to have that Armageddon box. Yeah, Axe, it's really good. If you can get it again, at some point, I'm going to get affiliate links to various hobby sites across the world. For the UK, it's going to be War Office because they look after me really well, and I want to give back to them for being so kind. And they, like I said, they've really helped me out in the past. So that's going to be my affiliate once their website's refixed and sorted. War Barbies. It kind of irks me when it shouldn't do, but it's because it's from her. It's like, thanks, love. The combat patrols come with paints too, so great for newer players. Yeah, 100%. Again, they are more expensive. I think they're about £105, whereas if you get them without the paints, but with the terrain, I think combined, are they like 180? In fact, let's find out together. Let me jump on to... you guys won't be able to see this. This is just done from my Mac, which is there, as you may have been able to figure out. Shop, Warhammer 40k, start here. They should all be here. Starter sets. Let me just go through this section. So we have getting started with orcs and getting started with space marines, £105 each. If you're getting the orc set, I think the orc set is really worth it. There is a lot of plastic there. If you're getting the Space Marines, I think they've done what they usually do with Space Marines, which even though the combat patrol is supposed to be balanced, the actual amount of miniatures that you're getting is pretty woeful. It really does frustrate me to no end. The Warhammer 40,000 starter set. This comes with unpainted terrain, a battle board, or is it a battle mat? I'll have a quick look, see if it says which one it is. This is slightly off topic from Starcraft. Fold-out game board. So these are compressed cardboard. They're really useful, actually. They're really cool. I like them. Unless they are the paper ones. 1.5 mil thick cardboard game boards. That might be a thinner version. Let's have a look. So these are the game boards that I have. Rigid, sturdy things. You're not just bending them like crazy. And then they fold out like so. These to me look thicker than 1.5 mil, but I could be wrong. I mean, that was also I suppose that could be 1.5 mil. So it's basically 4 sides, and they're double-sided as well. They have a different thing each side. They're really useful mats. So if you get the £155 Warhammer 40,000 starter set, you get Combat Patrol Space Marines, Combat Patrol Orcs, a fair bit of terrain, and you get 2 of those fold-out boards, which is quite a decent amount of space to actually play a game up to about 1,000 points as well, even though they recommend twice the board size for 1,000 points. Doesn't matter too much. So that's good. You also get the rulebook set, starter set handbook. So that teaches you how to build, paint, play games with your miniatures. That's pretty cool. 2-sided reference sheets, including army rules, stratagems, enhancements, and data sheets for combat patrol games. Again, that's useful. Certainly for the combat patrol style. You get 33 orcs and 13 space marines. This is what I mean by the plastic doesn't quite add up for the Space Marines for £105 if you get that separate. But for the orcs, it works really well. All right. Alrighty then. I'm there. In the pipe 5x5. There's quite a lot of combat patrols on there as well. There's also a 40k introductory set. This is not full armies. This is a much smaller set. That comes with a plethora of paints, which is not enough paints to paint really either of the sides well enough. but you get little cardboard printed terrains, which is fine, and a fold-out board. You get 6 Marines and you get 6 Orcs. That seems a bit crazy. That's a bit biased. Yeah, that's not a great deal. But again, they got some cool individual sculpts, which is nice, and some heavy weapons. I'm just gonna have a quick drink because I've been talking for over 2 hours. Jeez. All right. Those of you from the US and Canada, I'm looking at you, Axe. How far away are your miniatures, do you know? I know with Canada, the last time I checked, I think they've transferred to a new ship to get over to the continent. So hopefully, God, saying 3 weeks sounds depressing. Hopefully less time than 3 weeks, but I don't know if they've set off. I've not quite kept track of Canada. But I know the US, most of the things are going to, what's it called? Mystic Miniatures or something like that. So that stuff is all going in the right direction, which is good because you guys have waited long enough. It's about damn time, as Tychus would say. Right, Drakenhof Nightshade. That was it. We're going to apply some Drakenhof Nightshade onto this helm, onto these steel bits, because we want it to look like a nicely, what's the word I'm looking for? Nicely tempered metals. These are all high quality materials, properly oiled and relieved and stuff like that. So they're at their peak performance for fighting Zerg, and knowing Terran Marines, just generally the populace. I don't think they get on well with the general population. Understandable, the motherland gets the goods first. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the Polish are still, as far as I'm aware, there's still Polish people waiting to get their orders, although saying that, a lot of those are third party. And the street date for those is the 24th of August. We have had confirmed the 31st of August for the pre-orders for Wave 2, which I'm pretty sure they originally said was going to be the 24th as well for pre-orders. So I presume they've just delayed that a week so that the US you can at least look at your box before they ask you to go order more stuff. Isn't that kind of them? Like, thank you, Archon. You're so kind and generous to all of your customer base. Unless you're Australia. Don't talk about Australia. They are going to be waiting even longer than Canada. Actually, that could be a lie if your order if the ship hasn't quite left Europe yet. The Aussies might even beat you to that, which is like, come on. Anyway, politics and complications with shipping aside, when the order does come, for all of you that are US and Canada based and Australia and New Zealand, they are such beautifully designed miniatures. I can't tell you enough the quality that has gone into these. They're amazing. You'll genuinely love them. You really will. They are worth the wait. And also, they're quite heavy boxes as well, so they are worth the wait. Right, I'm just going to add a bit of titanium white because I keep getting distracted and sidetracked and I forget where I'm at. I'm just going to add a little bit of a highlight onto the edge of here for the white stripe. And I actually want to do a little bit of freehand, but like Sons of Korhal style design somewhere. I think I saw some on the Raynor's Raiders sheets, which are just down here. Just get our beautiful pylon out of the way. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So cool. Again, I love the idea of a pylon shows up and then an entire like Protoss army just appears next to it. Like, you've not had a bad day until an angry Protoss like horde just emerges on you. I mean, God forbid being a Zerg on Aya. They'd have had the full brunt of the force there. Should get out some of these cards. So these are the data cards for the Terrans. Jim Raynor. I'm there. All right. What? All right, this is what I want to do. So Raynor's Raiders. If you can see on his shoulder there, can you just see the little freehand that they've done on that? So I kind of want to have a little play about with that idea. I think that would look pretty cool. They've not done it on the regular Marine, but I will show you some of the inspiration for my Marines, which is that white stripe on that. Again, you don't have to do it to whatever standard that someone decided to paint this one. You'd have to do the exact same thing. You can do it exactly how you want to do it. I mean, even like the fact that I've done like a leather for the weapon holster rather than, just bare ass steel. Because again, I want to do mine slightly differently. But I do want to do this little freehand piece for the Sons of Korhal. And they seem to have done it on both sides as well. So just having a quick look at it, it appears to be almost like a sword hilt with some extra blades coming out of it. I've been working on some blind box heroes and the Carcharodon style. Very nice. I actually have Carcharodon. Words. It's late at night. Carcharodon Void Exiles. I have the hardback book for that, and yeah, they're pretty cool. Style going a new diorama. Have they released anything new in recent years in the Carcharodon or ever, or is it just a paint option? At the minute, it's just a paint option. They have had about 3 or 4 books, so I would say they are certainly due something very special, and I think they will get it at some point. I wouldn't imagine it would be too many years until we get some form of special Carcharodon. Maybe Tiberos. What's he called? That guy. You know what I mean? The supposed mega giant, disgusting monstrosity that is the chapter master of the Carcharodons. Sorry, just a little bit of focus just as I paint this. Okay, that is the first blade. That light has just died. So to compensate for that light, I will give myself that light. There we go. You can tell we've hit over the 2-hour mark now. Like, as soon as the light dies, that's when you know it's been a while. Oh, God, I'm going to have to move everything now. Let's have a look. Okay. So about a third of the way down here. There we go. So I'm just doing this design style here. Again, all freehand. Not my best work, but it's fine. You'll get the idea once it's done, at least. All right. I think this might also be a getting to a point where we're going to have to call it quits, because once that light goes, I'm sort of a little bit stuffed without having this one over the shoulder. All right, but we are getting this freehand done at least. Again, the joys of whenever you do any freehand like this, it's fairly easy to correct mistakes. You can just go back over it and don't get too bogged down or worried about it. So we're just going to quickly wash off that white. It is a really, really chunky pigment, is that as well. So it does take a little bit of washing out. We're going to get our Macragge blue. So this is just our regular blue. We're going to tighten up the edges of what we've just painted. And then I'll call it a day because I've got to do some painting downstairs to actually get a move on these guys. All right, let's just neaten that up a little bit. And then on this side as well. Okay, so if you can see, God, the lighting is now so much worse. This is horrendous. Give me a second. I have an idea, actually. Might extend out the stream by 5 minutes. I do have here a cord, a lifeline, if you would. Haha. Look at that. Hello. It's not long enough to reach down there, which is the only downside. But certainly it'll be able to reach along here. Just get this near. Put that across like so. And I'm just going to point this downwards a little bit. There you go. I'm lit up reasonably. Let me just change the color temperature. There we go. That's better. Right. And then if I can put this just here, can you guys just try and get it in the light and focused? Zoom for me. All right, can you see that Sons of Korhal sort of sign? That's pretty good, reasonable. Not the sharpest, but you know, it's fine. I had a light die halfway through. All the good stuff. Yeah, we are going to be calling it there, just because we are 2.25 hours in. Before we go, we are going to just say goodnight to Tali, because he's decided to come and shout at me again, so... A problem shared is a problem halved. So everybody say good boy to Tarley in the chat. Tarley, Tarley. Named after Samwell from Game of Thrones. Really? What else have you done? Ah, nice. All right. Thank you all for watching, everybody. It has honestly been a pleasure. Thanks, mate, Thanks for the live. Caught some of it after work today anyway. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, even at the start of it, it's the usual format. It's lots of talking and less of the doing. But, you know, we have managed to get quite a bit of doing done. So, yeah, if you get a chance to watch it back, enjoy. Watching the wall. Oh, I'm sorry. Did it just zoom into like that or something? oh, watching the wall. Got you. Yeah, my context switching sometimes is slow, even if I'm the one that switched the context. Yeah, for White Walkers. Thanks for the stream, as usual. Nice and entertaining. I'm really glad that you stuck around as well. Yeah, I appreciate all of you. So take care, and I will see you, hopefully, in Friday's video. Bye for now.